Enjoying your lunches. And we will be getting started with some prepared material from the stage. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge the members of the 33rd Alaska State Legislature who have joined us today. We are expecting Representative Jenny Armstrong to join us at 12:30, so momentarily. But when I call your name, if you would please stand, and we'll acknowledge you all at the end. So Senator Jesse Bjorkman, Representative Andrew Gray, Representative Rebecca Hemshoot, Representative Delana Johnson, Representative Andy Josephson, Senator James Kaufman, Senator Jesse Keel, Representative Tom McKay, Senator Kelly Merrick, she is, welcome, Representative Calvin Schrage, Representative Laddie Shaw, and I don't think Representative Stutes has arrived, but we hope to still have Representative Louise Stutes with us, and of course, Speaker of the House, Cathy Tilton. Please join me in welcoming our legislators. All right, with that, my role turns to AV Geek, and I'm going to invite Becky Windt Pearson, who's the Vice President of the Commonwealth North Board of Directors, and Cheryl Frasca, who's a President Emeritus, to come to the stage.
Just realized I think I'm double mic'd, so I'm going to turn this one off so as to not create too much interference. Thanks, Juanetta. And welcome again, everyone, to Commonwealth North Presents the Legislative Agenda for 2024. As Juanetta said, I'm Becky Windt Pearson. I'm GCI's Senior Vice President of Law and Corporate Advocacy and General Counsel, and I also serve as Vice President of the Commonwealth North Board of Directors. This is Commonwealth North's 17th annual legislative luncheon. I know we've had a few spirited ones in the past few years, including some virtual iterations. And last year, I remember a snow situation that required scaling snowbanks. I think that went to my thigh to get into the building. So I'm glad that it's been a little bit more of an easy road this year. We're gathered today on the traditional homelands of the Dena'ina Athabascan people, and I want to welcome Alaskans from across our rich and diverse state, which is home to more than 220 federally recognized tribes. I counted this morning, and it looks like we have 41 days until the opening day of the second session of the 33rd Legislature in Juneau on January 16th of 2024. Where, as always, our legislature will be grappling with critical questions, including, but certainly not limited to, how we fund our state government. So I particularly appreciate the opportunity today to hear from members of our legislative leadership and of the legislature, and to engage in conversation as a group with our fellow Alaskans across the political spectrum. I think this is an event which truly gives life to the mission of Commonwealth North and to our commitment to provide Alaskans with access to policymakers, to frank dialogue, and to continual civic engagement. The co-founders of Commonwealth North, former governors Bill Egan and Wally Hickel, joined together with other concerned Alaskans to found Commonwealth North more than 45 years ago, around the unifying theme of realizing the potential of the state of Alaska as promised under the Statehood Compact. And our mission remains unchanged: to educate Alaskans about policy issues facing our state and to help identify effective solutions. Our work is made possible by participation and support of our members. So I do want to make a pitch. And for anyone who is not a member of Commonwealth North, we welcome and encourage you to become a member of the organization. So to kick us off today, I'm pleased to introduce and welcome Cheryl Frasca to the stage, who's the driving force behind Commonwealth North's Fiscal Policy Study Group. I know Cheryl goes without introduction for many people in this room, having served as the director of the Office and Management Budget for the Murkowski administration and also for several mayoral administrations over the years. I think of you, Cheryl, as one of the people in Alaska most likely to know where the money is or where the money should be. I'm so pleased to have Cheryl here today to give us a briefing on the Alaska Budget Choices 2.0 project. So please join me in welcoming her to the stage. Right,
Thank you, Becky. And yes, my job these days is to really talk about what others really ought to do. So as part of that work, we at Commonwealth North 3 years ago developed a website called Budget Choices. And what we're going to roll out today and go live is Budget Choices 2.0. And the idea is to engage Alaskans in working through the choices and trade-offs that you as legislators deal with in trying to balance the budget, the very number of competing wants and needs. And it's not a public opinion poll. It's not scientific. It's really intended to be educational, again, about the choices and trade-offs. So we did this 3 years ago, and we had almost 2,300 folks, Alaskans, participate. And so what we've done is we've updated it to be a little bit more current in terms of the issues that are on the table. And so what we do is we start out. Well, the good news is 3 years ago, the state was facing a $1.3 billion gap between revenues expected and a continuation level budget. And so the good news is today, the budget's kind of balanced without having to go into savings. So that is the good news. But then the not so good news is that part of the balancing budget rests on what the politics of the permanent fund dividend. And so what we've done is we switched around the website. And so we've started out, and the first question we ask folks is, what's their choice regarding the permanent fund dividend? And then that answers determines if you have a surplus or if you have a deficit. And then you go through and work through the options. So here's a brief video. Juanetta, our IT team here.
Hey, Alaskans. It's almost that time again. You know, when we send our legislators to Juneau to hammer out the state's budget. But lately, that process has been on spin cycle. Cut the budget, pay the PFD. We need state services. So what's the answer? Alaskans like you are smart, practical, and you know how to balance your own budget. In Juneau, the biggest budget and political hurdle is deciding how much to spend on permanent fund dividends. If next year the state spends about the same on services and dividends, the budget could be balanced. But there's a lot of Alaskans that want to use the original dividend formula, which would cost $1.4 billion more. The state then would have to spend a lot less or raise a lot more revenue, or both. 5 years ago, the legislature approved a formula for how much permanent fund earnings could be used each year to help pay for state services, as well as the dividend. This was an important change. Before, permanent fund earnings had only been used to pay for annual dividends, while the new law enabled the state to continue state services with this additional money. It also meant elected officials had to choose how much went to pay dividends and how much went to pay for state services. This has been a tough tug of war, and this is where your help is needed. What dividend decision do you think the legislature and governor should make? What other budget choices would you then recommend? Here's your chance to let the governor and legislature know what's important to you and how you would balance the budget. Click the link below to start making your Alaska budget choices.
So instead of clicking the link below, on your tables is a little card. And if you'll get out your phone, we're going to do a poll among the people here as to what your preference is regarding the dividend. And so on the card, it gives you the phone number to call with your message app. And so you have 4 choices, not on the app. in the permanent fund dividend. So the first is a 50-50 split of the earnings for dividends. And that means you would support spending $915 million more, or go with the current 75% to government services, 25% to dividends. So that would be about equal, no change in spending levels. Use the statutory dividend formula, which would cost about $1.4 billion more. Or, gee, permanent fund earnings are down. Let's suspend the dividend for now until earnings return higher. So right now you should be on your phones picking one of those options. It's anonymous. We won't track you down by your phone numbers. So Juanetta will get the results live, so to speak. Don't be shy. Cathy Tilton, where's your phone? It's in your car. Oh, borrow your neighbor's. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I'll give you mine. What? Yeah, staff can vote twice. How we doing, Juanetta? Okay, so while it's tabulating. So what we do is we ask, well, once we get some results in, we'll show you what happens then, depending on what the majority choice is. But the idea here is then after you make your choice on the website, then you'll move on to making other revenue and spending choices in order to balance your budget. So it's a running total kind of thing. So if you go with the statutory formula, you need to find either 1.4 billion in new revenues or a mix with new revenues and some spending reductions. So that's the idea of a running total of your own personal balancing the budget. The responses are, we ask for your zip code so we can regionalize where the responses are from. And they are confidential otherwise, so there's no backtracking of who you said what. So maybe what we could do is, Juanetta, why don't we pause once you get that and people have a chance, and then this way we can go on with the program. So we do encourage you to, if you're an employer, get your colleagues to participate. If you want to liven up your family discussion over the holidays, ask them what their choices are. So I know that's what my friends do, whether you want to know or not. So what do you think, Juanetta? Can't hear you. So 22% said 50-50 split. 33%, is that say 70-25, 7% statutory, and what's the bottom number? 38 said to suspend until earnings are up. So golly whiz, can tell who's not running for election. So that is interesting because then you would have very little to do on the website. So again, we're going to reach out, encourage your friends and colleagues to participate. If you're part of an organization, get your membership to do it as well. And again, it's an educational tool as well as to help inform what's on Alaskans' mind. And to our study group members, thank you for participating. Really appreciate the help and especially the work we did 3 years ago, which was the base for today. So thank you. Oops. There you go.
Thank you, Cheryl. My husband is here. I think we may have a more spirited Christmas family dinner if we bring that up with our family this year. All right. So carrying on next, I'm pleased to welcome the Speaker of the House, Cathy Tilton, and Nat Herz to join me on the stage. Welcome to you both. As they make their way up, I'll introduce them in greater depth. Speaker Tilton was elected by the House majority to her leadership role in 2023. She has served in the Alaska House of Representatives since 2015, first representing what was then District 12 and now representing District 26, spanning from the Mat-Su Gateway south of the Goose Bay Road nearly to Big Lake. She's a lifelong Alaskan, having grown up here in Anchorage, but she's lived, worked, and raised her family in the Mat-Su for 30 years. I know I've had the chance to talk with her about GCI's policy priorities, and I've always been impressed with her understanding of our nuanced issues in her leadership. So welcome, Speaker Tilton. Joining me to pose discussion questions to Speaker Tilton is Nat Herz. Nat is a freelance journalist and publisher of the Northern Journal. Previously, he worked as a reporter for Alaska Public Media and the Anchorage Daily News. He's a longtime observer of the Alaska State Legislature and the legislative process, and is particularly appreciated in my house for his expertise on and his coverage of cross-country skiing. So welcome, Nat. Did my mic transition work? Yes. All right. So I can kick us off. And Speaker Tilton, I just wanted to open by asking you to say a few words about your expectations out of the coming session. I would welcome your thoughts on how you think session is going to play out.
Thank you for that. And thank you everyone for being here this afternoon and for allowing me to speak with you here for just a minute. It's not, the mic's not, is that better? Better. Louder. Push the button. My button's on. Okay, can you hear me now? No. All right. We're gonna get you some more volume here. Good? All right, is that better? Nobody's saying anything?
You sound great to me.
Yeah, you sound
All
great to me.
right, sounds great. Anyway, thanks so much for having me here this afternoon to talk about the upcoming session. You know, there's a lot of things that are on the horizon for Alaska. Alaska is a state full of resilient people, and we have a lot of issues to deal with, and we just kind of keep adding more issues and more issues and more issues. I think some of the big things you're going to see as forefront of the legislative agenda will deal with the energy, dealing with skin-like gas, and dealing with transmission lines for along the rail belt. Those are going to be some big items. There's some big grants that we could have coming into our state, and I think that energy will probably take most of the air out of the room. Although we all know that we have some issues to deal with education, and that's a big item that we need to deal with public education. What the goal is for public education is to, as far as the caucus, is it still not? There we go. Better.
I wonder if we could just turn it off for a minute.
Or does he need it on to make sure that this?
Been turning it out, is doing it.
Yeah, that didn't help.
Turn it off. Yeah, okay, we're back. Well, my talk is going to be really short because kind of like me. Anyway, education is going to be a big issue. It has been a big issue, and just finding out what is the right amount that our public education should be funded at. We're looking at putting together some kind of an education package. It probably won't make anybody happy, but it'll address some of the funding issues that we have going on. It'll address some of the, getting good results for our students, and it'll address some other issues and paths that we could take as far as making Alaska the best place to raise your children, and them getting the best education that they can get. So energy and education are going to be a big deal. As far as on the horizon as crime goes, we're going to be looking at the trafficking bill that the governor put forward. That's going to be a priority for us to get through the legislature this year. And then also the fentanyl bill, which is has been a big problem across this nation and unfortunately made its way to Alaska. And if we back up just to the trafficking bill, one of the things that was interesting to me is I had no idea how much of that was actually happening here in our state, and had this very interesting conversation with someone who's been dealing in trafficking, who said that, and I can't believe this, but said that there was folks that are paying some of our young folks to give names of people who are kind of those ones that are off to themselves. And that I had no idea that they would pay money to do that, to lure our young people into this. So it's a big deal, and I want to make sure that we are addressing that issue to the best of our ability. The budget, of course, is going to be a huge deal. But there's not a whole lot I can say about what the budget is going to look like because we have the release of the budget coming here on the 15th. We'll probably get a little briefing on the 14th of what that might look like. But at this point, I think, it's pretty much anyone's guess. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what the governor's budget looks like, but we'll move on from there. We have some wonderful co-chairs and wonderful people working on the finance committee that will help address that. I think I've touched, elections reform. We tried to put together an elections bill last session that was a bipartisan bill that was kind of an omnibus bill, but we found, what we found is that we are all really divided. As you just saw on the question about the PFD, it's a very divided answer. It's a very divided Alaska. And the same thing with the elections reform bill. So we will probably be looking at doing more of an independent bill versus a big omnibus bill to reform elections. So with that, that's kind of just a baseline of where we'll get started.
There you go.
Yeah, I would love to launch into another policy area that I feel like in talking about what this session would focus on. It's one of the things that I think escapes kind of these core issues that the legislature is dealing with, but both from a personal perspective and knowing that I have a perspective that relates to many other Alaskans. When I took a look at the healthcare exchange this year, I'm a self-employed person, so I'm on the individual Obamacare marketplace. I'm facing an 18% increase in premiums, and I think there are about 25,000 other Alaskans that are in a similar position. I think we're also seeing like significant turmoil in the industry with the repeal of the 80% rule and impending litigation that's being filed against the state. And so I just have one basic question, which is, what's one policy or bill that the legislature could pass in this session to help control the cost of healthcare for Alaskans?
You bet. Thanks, Nat. And it's interesting you brought that up because I think everybody knows that my grandson was born at 29 weeks, so very premature, and was in the NICU for 79 days. And his parents are private business owners. So his insurance is coming from the exchange as well. And my daughter-in-law just came to me yesterday, and she said, I can when we started, it was $300 a month just for him, and now it's $5. And with a deductible, of like $6,000 that they spend. And she said, I don't know what to do. And so you're right, it's facing a lot of Alaskans. And one of the bills I think that has been making its way through the legislature is looking at all payers claims database. And I don't know exactly where that bill is sitting right now, but that may be something where it provides some transparency in costs and could help to bring some costs down. So I think that's one of the things that we could do. And then the other thing we need to do is just with insurance. And there is a bill that would open up the insurance, the state plan for teachers and what have you. I don't know if that'll go anywhere or not, but that's another way that we can help reduce costs here in the state. Thank you.
I want to ask you to talk a little bit more in a little bit more depth about education. I know you touched on it in your opening remarks, and I know that's a big issue that we've all been tracking, that last year the legislature did improve that substantial one-time increase that was then subject to a partial veto from the governor, and the governor did indicate a willingness to potentially support broader funding increase this year, provided depending on attendance and budget numbers this year. Where do you think, speaking a little bit more specificity about where you think that conversation's going to go this year, and where do you think the legislature is going to land?
Sure, that's kind of guessing where it's going to land is kind of like looking at the PFD question there, to be honest with you. We're seeing requests across the state for increases. The Anchorage School District, I think, set a $1,600 BSA is what they needed, and Fairbanks as well. But then you have places like the Mat-Su, which is a much smaller BSA number. The question is just going to be, how do we fund education where the students are getting the best education that they can, and that we're getting outcomes that we can depend on for our students. We know that we have a workforce challenge, and some of that does actually go back to the education that, that people are receiving. And of course, our students here in Alaska deserve the best education that they can get. So maybe that education needs some variety. In the Mat-Su, we have a lot of variety of ways that people can choose to take their education through charter schools, or, the kind of help assist. And even looking at, I just had a really interesting discussion with a group that's called Excel, and they are basically a rural education system that they work with six different school districts right now. And they start with kids at 7th grade by bringing them in for little components. The 7th grade is like a 3-day class, and you learn more about being a leader and leadership. And you work your way from 7th through 12th grade. And by 12th grade, you can end up, and they also partner with like NIT and other places that are privately, or even the unions that are teaching people and getting them their certificates in different kinds of fields. And by the time an individual graduates, they can have their certificate in hand and be work ready. So I think we have to go be, I certainly adore our public sector teachers but I think that we're going to have to look at some creative ways of expanding education so that we end up with the workforce and the Alaskans, to provide for that workforce and increase our economy.
I'd love to build on that question a little bit. I think, we've seen in the legislature in the past few years, there's sort of a big debate between do we do one-time funding increases for legislation versus do we do base student allocation? That's the per student funding that is actually in law and repeated year after year. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about sort of the collective view of your caucus about the urgency in actually raising the BSA as sort of a dependable future commitment of funding from the legislature compared to the one-time increase, which is primarily what we saw in this current year.
Sure. I can certainly understand school districts' desire to have a stability. We all want stability in our funding so that we know where we can fund for the next year and the next session. But I will say that there is not just a debate over what the BSA number should look like. There's a lot of things that go along with the BSA. There's people transportation. There's costs, maintenance costs. So when you look at education and you think about it as a package, it's not just the BSA. It includes all these other things. But I will say that potentially, we do have a piece of legislation that might be coming forward from a representative that's here in the room today that is looking at maybe remodeling the way the BSA is calculated. So that may be something that may come forward. We as a caucus haven't had a goal-setting session where we're sitting down and really hammering out what every piece of legislation looks like. That's coming up here in a few weeks. But that's something you may see. You may see some kind of legislation saying, maybe we need to readdress how we're calculating this. It's a very complicated calculation, and maybe we need to simplify that a little bit. And again, we're looking at education funding as a whole package, not just the BSA, but we're looking at those costs the major maintenance costs are a challenge. We're looking at health insurance costs for the districts. We're looking at all of those things. So it's going to take a holistic look at everything.
You want to go?
I've got another question I'd love to throw in there. So, we've read, I guess I've also written a lot of headlines recently about the situation with Cook Inlet gas, the potential for utilities to start bringing in liquefied natural gas imports. We've also seen in this current interim, there was like a whole squadron of legislators who took a trip to Iceland, which I'm told was really not a junket and was like quite substantive. And legislators really returning from that with some strong ideas, some better relationships with utility leaders and other folks in kind of the energy realm, and some, I think, specific proposals that we're going to see come forward from legislators, from the administration, probably ideas from the industry. And so I think one concern that I've heard is that there are now going to be so many competing ideas on energy during the upcoming session that maybe this is going to turn into sort of an unwieldy package and we get stuck. And I'm curious what your sense is of if your caucus has one overriding priority that it wants to get out of the session when it comes to energy.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. I mean, obviously, look at the fiscal policy working group. We have a package of ideas that we've put together. And we can't come together as a legislature right now to even move those forward. So we may have to look at the fiscal policy of the state, maybe in pieces. We wanted to present it all in a package because that way it brings more of the legislature on board. But at this point in time, we were supposed to have a special session, but it just appeared that we were just all over the place with that. So it looks like what we'll have to do is maybe just do individual pieces, and having a long-term fiscal plan for the state would really cure a lot of these things that we have going on. But your question was about energy. And the Energy Task Force, the Governor's Energy Task Force has released a report. I will say that I have not read that report. I do have it in my possession. There's a lot of good meat in that report of things that they see that we should move forward. And it was a good mix of folks that were on that. Although I don't know if there was any oil and gas industry folks involved in that task force. So that might be something that needs to be added. There was a group of legislators and CEOs of utility companies who did take a trip to Iceland. And again, I was not a part of that. Our caucus chose to send a couple of folks because we wanted to be a part of that, but we didn't feel like we needed to have a whole lot of people there. And I understand that there was a debriefing on that. Again, I wasn't involved in that or invited to that. So, so that being said, you're right. There could be a lot of things on the table. I know Representative Rauscher, who is our energy chair, has some pieces of legislation that the governor also has some pieces of legislation that are along the same lines. So I think that that'll just be a matter of the legislature maybe, or the sponsor of the legislation working with the governor and figuring out which piece of legislation covers, makes the best choices for Alaska. But you're right, we could get overload. We do that to ourselves all the time, and hopefully we won't, and we'll stay focused and make a decision.
Well, I think we're going to wrap shortly to move on to the table discussion portion of our event, but I have one last question to wrap up, which is just talk to us about what success looks like for your legislative priorities, for your caucus. What does success look like in this session?
Success would look like obviously, I think the whole state knows that there was a little bit of a divide between the House and the Senate last session, and we're going to work hard with our Senate partners to work to have a better working relationship. We have a good working relationship with the administration, so if we can get all three of us on board and working together, that we can come up with a budget that is good for Alaska, that would be success for me. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insight today. Thank you, Nat, for joining me. And with that, I'll turn it over to Winetta to explain how we will move into the table discussion portion of our event.
Join me in thanking our speakers. Well, I think most of you have attended one of these events before, but this is the speed dating round of the event where you have an opportunity to discuss legislative priorities and issues at your tables. We'll do it in 3 15-minute rounds. And so I'll make an announcement when we're about 2 minutes out. All of the participants at the tables stay there and the legislators move forward to the next highest table. So with that, please go ahead and you can start engaging by, if you haven't already introduced yourselves, let me encourage you to introduce yourselves around the table and start with the legislator at your table to have some opening remarks and then have at it with open discussion. So.